Today's story is about courage, compassion, and breaking traditions. When a young Apache girl is left bound and desperate, a kind-hearted rancher makes a choice that changes both their lives forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The sun was low over the Arizona mesas, casting long shadows across Sam Whitaker's sprawling ranch. Dust rose from the dry earth as the wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying the scent of mesquite and distant wildflowers. Sam, a rugged man in his mid-40s, had lived all his life by tradition, by rules passed down from generations of ranchers. His days were filled with the rhythmic sounds of cattle lowing and horses stamping. But today, an unease had settled over him. Something in the air felt different, charged, like a storm yet to come. As he rode along the fence line, he spotted movement near a cluster of mesquite trees. At first, he thought it might be one of the ranch hands, but as he drew closer, he saw a young girl kneeling on the dry ground. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope, her dark hair tangled across her face. Fear shone in her eyes as she struggled to free herself. She whispered almost inaudibly, "Please, I'm begging you, untie it." The desperation in her voice made Sam pause, a knot forming in his chest. Sam dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm. "Hey there. It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you," he said, careful not to startle her further. The girl flinched at his approach but did not cry out. Her eyes, wide and trembling, seemed to search for any hint of deceit, any reason to distrust him. Sam felt a pang of sympathy and an almost instinctive protectiveness. Though he had always respected the rules of his land and his people, something told him that leaving her bound and alone was unthinkable. He knelt beside her, examining the ropes. They were tightly knotted, rough against her tender skin, leaving red marks on her wrists. "Who did this to you?" he asked gently. She hesitated, eyes darting around the empty fields, then shook her head. Fear rooted her in silence. Sam's hands moved carefully, loosening the knots, feeling the tension in her muscles. Every movement was deliberate, slow, meant to convey that he was there to help, not harm. Finally, the ropes gave way and she rubbed her wrists, tears sliding down her dusty cheeks. The girl's voice trembled as she whispered her gratitude. Why did you help me?" Sam's mind churned. Breaking tradition, his ancestors' rules, the unspoken codes of the land, could have consequences. Yet, as he looked into her eyes, he realized that morality outweighed ritual. "Because no one should be left to suffer alone," he replied softly. "Not here, not anywhere." The sincerity in his voice seemed to reach her, and she allowed herself a small, tentative smile, though her body remained tense with lingering fear. He helped her to her feet, and they began the slow walk back toward the ranch house. Each step was careful, measured. Sam kept glancing back to ensure no threat followed them, while the girl, still uncertain, mirrored his pace. The silence between them was not awkward. It was filled with a quiet understanding. Sam introduced himself. "I'm Sam. You're safe now." Her name came out softly, almost shyly, Nayeli. They exchanged nothing more at first, but the bond had begun forming, fragile but undeniable. As they reached the ranch house, Sam led her inside, setting her gently on a chair and offering a glass of water. She accepted it hesitantly, eyes wide, scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the room, a comfort she hadn't felt in days. Sam watched her carefully, noticing the scars along her arms, the dirt under her fingernails. Someone had left her here abandoned, and yet she carried herself with quiet strength. Sam admired her resilience, realizing that her courage was the kind that could not be tied down or broken. Sitting by the fire that evening, Sam reflected on the day's events. Tradition had been a guiding principle of his life, but helping Nayeli had forced him to confront a different truth. That kindness sometimes required courage, and courage sometimes meant defying what everyone else expected. He knew the elders of the Apache community and the local ranchers might question his actions, But as he watched Nayeli quietly tending to the small chores around the kitchen, he felt an unfamiliar sense of fulfillment. He had acted rightly, regardless of the consequences. Nayeli eventually spoke, her voice tentative but curious. Do you always help people you don't know? Sam chuckled softly, shaking his head. Not always. But some things, some people, you can't walk away from. He watched her process his words, realizing that this encounter was more than a momentary act of mercy. It was a turning point for both of them. For Nayeli, it was safety. For Sam, it was a test of his humanity, one he had passed. The night deepened, and the stars stretched across the Arizona sky, bright and infinite. Sam and Nayeli sat together on the porch, watching the vast desert land unfold before them. Words were unnecessary now. The silence spoke volumes. Trust, once fragile and tentative, had begun to take root. Sam knew that helping her was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, questions from the town, whispers from tradition. But he also knew that no challenge was greater than doing the right thing. And for the first time in years, he felt a quiet, unwavering peace settle in his chest. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting warm golden light across the ranch kitchen. Nayeli stirred slowly, still uncertain of this new world she had found herself in. The smell of frying bacon and brewing coffee filled the air, an unexpected comfort after the terror of the previous day. Sam, ever practical, had prepared a simple breakfast: eggs, toast, and fresh fruit, hoping it would show her she was safe and that someone genuinely cared. Nayeli sat quietly, hands wrapped around a mug of warm tea, watching him. The silence felt heavy but not uncomfortable. It was a moment of understanding between two people bound by circumstance. Finally, she spoke, her voice tentative, still wary of the unfamiliar. "Why did you risk everything for me?" Her words hung in the air, almost fragile in their vulnerability. Sam set down the spatula he had been holding, leaning against the counter. He sighed, feeling the weight of yesterday's decision. Sometimes the right thing isn't the easiest thing. Sometimes you have to go against what everyone expects of you, he said softly. He met her gaze, seeing her doubts mirrored in those dark, fearful eyes. "And I couldn't walk away while you were in danger." Nayeli studied him, her expression shifting between curiosity and quiet admiration. She had lived her life learning caution, mistrust, and survival. But Sam's actions spoke a language she had nearly forgotten, one of kindness without expectation, of courage without arrogance. I've never met anyone like you," she said, the words barely audible but filled with sincerity. Sam gave a small smile, nodding toward her. "And I've never met anyone as strong as you. Strength isn't just about physical courage. It's about surviving, moving forward, and believing even when the world seems against you." As the days passed, their bond deepened naturally. Sam introduced Nayeli to the routines of the ranch, feeding the horses, checking fences, and tending to the small herd of cattle grazing on the open plains. She learned quickly, her movements precise, her instincts sharp. In return, she shared stories of her Apache heritage, teaching Sam songs, dances, and legends that had been passed down for generations. They discovered a mutual respect for each other's worlds, a bridge forming between the rugged life of a rancher and the spiritual legacy of a proud people. Despite their growing connection, the outside world was not silent. Whispers traveled across town, questioning Sam's decisions, his defiance of tradition. Some neighbors shook their heads at the thought of helping a girl who was not of their community, warning him of judgment and consequences. Nayeli, aware of the murmurs, held herself with quiet dignity. "Let them talk," she said one evening, her voice calm and firm. "You did what was right. That's all that matters." Sam admired her resilience, realizing that courage sometimes required facing not just immediate danger, but the slow, grinding skepticism of others. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mesas, Sam found Nayeli perched on the hill overlooking the ranch, her silhouette framed against the fiery horizon. He sat beside her, letting the silence stretch before speaking. "Helping you, it changed me," he said quietly, almost to himself. I realized that courage isn't just about facing storms in the fields. It's about facing storms in your heart, storms that demand empathy, compassion, and sometimes sacrifice. Nayeli listened, understanding the gravity behind his words. Her own heart quietly shifting, she turned to him, a faint smile breaking through the shadows of the setting sun. "And you've given me a chance to believe in goodness again," she whispered. It was not a promise nor a declaration, but a recognition of trust and safety, a gift she had not expected to receive. Sam nodded, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride and humility. He knew that both their lives had been irrevocably altered by a single act of courage, a choice to defy tradition for the sake of doing what was right. Days turned into weeks, and life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Sam and Nayeli worked together, laughed together, and shared quiet moments beneath the wide Arizona sky. Their bond, once forged in fear and desperation, matured into trust, mutual respect, and understanding. The land itself seemed to embrace their connection, the wind carrying the sound of laughter across the plains, the horses neighing softly in companionship. It was as if the desert acknowledged the harmony between two unlikely allies, two souls from different worlds who had found common ground. One night, after a long day of work, Sam and Nayeli stood outside watching the stars emerge, glittering across the dark canvas of the sky. The air was cool, filled with the scent of sage and earth, and the silence was profound. "Do you think tradition will ever understand?" Nayeli asked, her voice thoughtful. Sam shook his head gently. "Maybe not, but that's not always the point. Sometimes you have to make your own path, guided by what's right, not just what's expected." Nayeli nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight, a quiet understanding passing between them. In that moment, under the vast expanse of the Arizona night, Sam and Nayeli felt the depth of their shared journey. They had faced fear, defied expectations, and embraced courage that went beyond the physical. Their connection was unspoken yet undeniable, a testament to the power of compassion, bravery, and the choice to act with integrity. And as the wind whispered through the desert, carrying the scent of freedom and hope, both understood that true strength lay not in rules or tradition, but in the courage to stand for what is right, even when the world expected them not to.